Coffee catastrophe. Liam clutched the travel mug like a lifeline. It was his first day as an intern at Evans Enterprises, and his nerves felt like a squadron of fighter jets performing aerobatics in his stomach. He'd woken up 3 hours early, ironed his shirt twice, and practiced his handshake in the mirror until his palm was slick with sweat. He just needed to make a good impression. The elevator doors chimed open on the executive floor, revealing a sleek, modern space that smelled faintly of lemon polish and ambition. He walked towards the reception desk, his heart hammering against his ribs. Disaster struck 3 steps in. His shoe snagged on the edge of a ridiculously plush rug, sending him sprawling forward. The travel mug flew from his grasp, spewing hot, dark coffee in a wide arc. A significant portion landed squarely on his freshly ironed shirt, blooming across the pale blue fabric like a Rorschach test gone horribly wrong. Liam froze, mortified. Coffee dripped from his chin, and the air filled with the rich, bitter aroma. He looked up, his face burning. Across the open-plan office, near a window overlooking the city, a woman stood observing the scene. She was tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit the color of charcoal. Vivian Evans, he presumed, the CEO's legendary secretary. Her expression was unreadable, a subtle curve playing on her lips. Liam scrambled to his feet, muttering apologies that tangled together in a nonsensical jumble. I am so sorry. I tripped, I didn't see the rug. I'm Liam O'Connell, the new intern. He gestured vaguely at the coffee stain, his face a mask of mortification. Vivian watched him with amusement glinting in her steel blue eyes. Mr. O'Connell, she said, her voice smooth and cool as ice water. Welcome to Evans Enterprises. I trust you'll be more careful in the future. He nodded frantically, grabbing a handful of tissues from a nearby desk and dabbing uselessly at the stain. It only seemed to make it worse. Vivian approached, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. Don't bother, she said, gesturing to the mess with a manicured hand. It's a lost cause. Go to the supply closet. You'll find a company t-shirt in there. It's not ideal, but it's better than walking around looking like you lost a fight with a caffeinated octopus. Liam felt a flicker of relief amidst the embarrassment. Thank you, Ms. Evans. Vivian, she corrected, her eyes holding his for a brief, intense moment. Now, after you've cleaned yourself up, come to my office. I have a task for you. He scurried away towards the supply closet, the image of Vivian's amused expression burned into his mind. This was not the first impression he'd hoped to make. But as he pulled on the oversized, slightly itchy t-shirt, a tiny seed of hope sprouted in his chest. He had caught her attention, hadn't he? Even if it was for all the wrong reasons. Unexpected trip. O'Connell. My office. Now. Vivian's voice cut through the morning's hum of keyboards like a freshly sharpened blade. Liam, halfway through retrieving his lukewarm coffee, nearly jumped out of his skin, splashing the remaining liquid across his already stained shirt. He dabbed at the mess with a napkin, his face a picture of mortified panic. Vivian, leaning against her doorframe, watched him with a hint of amusement in her blue eyes. Try to keep the coffee on the inside next time, intern. She straightened, smoothing down her impeccably tailored skirt. Pack a bag, you're coming with me to Chicago. Liam's jaw dropped. Chicago? But I'm just an intern. And covered in coffee. Consider it a fast-track learning experience. The flight leaves in 3 hours. Be ready. She turned and disappeared back into her office, leaving Liam sputtering in her wake. He stumbled back to his desk, frantically Googling the Beaumont Hotel Chicago. Images of sleek, modern suites filled the screen. He scrolled further, trying to find any mention of his potential duties. Assisting with client presentations and managing travel arrangements were the only clues he could find. Great. He barely managed his own laundry. Panic propelled him into action. He threw a few shirts, a pair of slightly too tight jeans, and his emergency interview suit into a battered duffel bag. His hands trembled as he folded, unfolded, and refolded each item. He even considered ironing his socks, before dismissing the idea as utter madness. He paused, staring at the open suitcase, a fresh wave of anxiety washing over him. Chicago. Vivian. A business trip. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. This was either the opportunity of a lifetime or a colossal disaster waiting to happen. He grabbed his toothbrush and threw it in, deciding that overthinking wouldn't get him anywhere. He just hoped he wouldn't spill coffee on anyone important. 1 room, 1 bed. The taxi deposited them outside the grand edifice of the Hotel Majestic. Liam, still faintly smelling of burnt coffee and shame, fumbled with the luggage while Vivian, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, glided towards the entrance. He trailed behind, a puppy dog lost in a world of polished brass and hushed tones. At the reception desk, Vivian's smile could have melted glaciers. Evans, Vivian. Reservation for 2 nights. The clerk tapped away at his keyboard, his expression shifting from professional courtesy to something akin to confused pity. Ah, Ms. Evans. There seems to be a slight discrepancy with your booking. Liam felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Discrepancies were never good. Discrepancy. Vivian's voice remained smooth, but a dangerous edge had crept in. Yes, madam. It appears there was an oversight. You are booked into a double room. Vivian blinked, the glacial smile finally cracking. A double room? As in, 1 room. The clerk, now sweating slightly under Vivian's gaze, stammered, why yes, madam. With 1 bed. Liam swallowed hard. He could feel Vivian's eyes on him, assessing, calculating. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, punctuated only by the faint clinking of ice in the lobby bar. I see, Vivian said finally, her voice dangerously low. She turned her attention back to the clerk. And is there anything you can do about this, oversight? The clerk frantically typed, his fingers flying across the keys. Unfortunately, madam, the hotel is fully booked. There are no other rooms available. Vivian sighed, a sound that managed to convey both weariness and simmering irritation. Fine. We'll take it. She turned to Liam, her expression unreadable. Liam, be a dear and get the bags. Inside the room, the situation was even more dire. 1 king-sized bed dominated the space. Liam deposited the luggage in the corner, avoiding Vivian's gaze. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Well, Vivian said, breaking the silence with a forced cheerfulness, this is cozy. Liam managed a weak smile. Cozy. Right. He scanned the room, desperately searching for an alternative. A sofa? An armchair? Anything that wasn't the king-sized bed. So, Vivian continued, her voice laced with amusement, how do you propose we handle this situation? Liam's mind raced. I can sleep on the floor, he offered weakly. Vivian raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. Don't be ridiculous, Liam. We'll figure something out. She walked towards the minibar, her back to him. Now, who wants a drink? Dividing lines. Vivian surveyed the bed, a king-sized expanse that suddenly felt impossibly small. All right, O'Connell, she said, her voice crisp and professional, a stark contrast to the amused glint in her eyes. Here's how it's going to work. We divide this thing. Mentally, physically, spiritually. Liam, still damp and smelling faintly of hazelnut, blinked. Divide it? She nodded, striding to the bedside table and grabbing a spare pen and a Gideon Bible. This, she declared, placing the Bible precisely in the center of the mattress, is the DMZ. No man's land. You stay on your side. I stay on mine. Understood? He swallowed, the lump in his throat feeling suspiciously like panic. Understood. Vivian kicked off her heels, the click echoing in the suddenly silent room. She loosened the severe knot of her scarf, the silk whispering against her skin. Liam averted his eyes, focusing intently on a particularly uninspiring landscape painting on the opposite wall. He could practically feel the heat radiating from her, a silent, simmering challenge. And O'Connell? Her voice was softer now, almost a purr. He risked a glance. She was watching him, a small smile playing on her lips. No snoring. I value my beauty sleep. He scrambled to his side of the bed, feeling like a scolded puppy. He lay rigidly on his back, staring at the ceiling, the pristine white surface mocking his inner turmoil. Relax, he told himself. Just relax. It's just a bed. Just a very large bed with Vivian Evans on the other side of it, separated only by a thin mattress and a well-placed Bible. Oh God, he thought. I am so screwed. Vivian, on her side, closed her eyes, a sigh escaping her lips. Well, this is certainly more interesting than spreadsheets, she mused. The coffee-stained intern was a walking disaster, yes, but there was something endearingly awkward about him. And the way he blushed. It had been a long time since she had encountered genuine, unadulterated blushing. She adjusted the pillow under her head, the scent of lavender filling her nostrils. It would be a long night. Impressing the client. The air in the private dining room hung thick with the scent of truffle oil and unspoken expectations. Liam, still faintly damp from the morning's coffee catastrophe, felt like a stray dog that had wandered into a Crufts competition. Mr. Henderson, the client, a man whose handshake could crush walnuts, droned on about quarterly projections, his voice a low, monotonous hum. Vivian, seated to Liam's right, maintained a flawless facade of attentive interest, her blue eyes occasionally flicking to Liam with an almost imperceptible flicker of amusement. Liam's stomach churned. He hadn't understood half of what Henderson had been saying. He fiddled nervously with his water glass, the crystal cool against his clammy palms. The tension was a physical thing, pressing down on him, stifling his breath. Henderson paused, fixing everyone with a steely gaze. So, the question remains, how do we penetrate the Gen Z market? Silence descended, thick and heavy. Liam, fueled by a desperate need to contribute something, anything, blurted out, have you considered leveraging micro-influencers on TikTok? Authenticity resonates strongly with that demographic. Instead of celebrity endorsements, perhaps smaller, relatable creators sharing genuine experiences with the product. Henderson stared, his expression unreadable. Vivian, however, subtly inclined her head, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. Interesting, Henderson rumbled, stroking his chin. We dismissed TikTok as frivolous. But your point about authenticity, there's merit there. He launched into a series of rapid-fire questions, peppering Liam with requests for specific examples and potential campaign strategies. Liam, adrenaline coursing through him, found himself surprisingly articulate. He cited case studies, rattled off engagement rates, and even suggested a few influencer names, drawing on his younger sister's obsession with the platform. The room seemed to shift, the oppressive atmosphere lightening. He could feel Vivian's gaze on him, no longer amused, but something closer to approval. When Henderson finally subsided, he turned to Vivian. Evans, follow up with O'Connell on this. I want a detailed proposal on my desk by Friday. Vivian nodded, her expression professional. Of course, Mr. Henderson. As Henderson resumed his monologue, this time with a distinctly warmer tone, Vivian leaned slightly towards Liam, her perfume, a sophisticated blend of jasmine and sandalwood, filling his senses. Not bad, O'Connell, she murmured, her voice a low, husky whisper. Not bad at all. Stormy night. The first clap of thunder rattled the windows of the hotel room, making Liam jump. He was still mortified, the faint scent of lukewarm coffee clinging to his borrowed shirt. He glanced at Vivian, who was calmly watching the downpour intensify outside. Lightning illuminated her face, highlighting the amusement in her eyes. "Quite the storm," she commented, her voice a smooth counterpoint to the roaring wind. "Makes you want to curl up with a good book, doesn't it?" Liam mumbled something unintelligible, still acutely aware of the awkwardness hanging heavy in the air. The storm seemed to amplify it, trapping them in this shared space, this bed. Vivian sighed theatrically. "All right, in turn. Enough sulking. How about some tea? I think I saw a kettle in that sad excuse for a minibar." He watched as she gracefully navigated the small space, her movements confident and unhurried. The tea was instant and tasted vaguely of chemicals, but the warmth was welcome. They sat in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the relentless drumming of rain against the glass. "So," Vivian began, swirling the tea in her mug. "Tell me something about yourself, Liam O'Connell, that isn't on your meticulously crafted resume." He hesitated. What could he possibly say that wouldn't make him sound even more pathetic? I collect vintage comic books," he blurted out, the words tumbling out faster than he intended. "Mostly Silver Age Marvel." Vivian raised an eyebrow. "Really? I wouldn't have pegged you as the superhero type." He flushed. "It's not about being a superhero. They're like little time capsules. Windows into a different world." He found himself talking, really talking, about the escapism the comics offered, the vibrant colors, the flawed characters. Vivian listened intently, her gaze unwavering. When he finally trailed off, a little embarrassed by his sudden outpouring, she smiled. "See? Everyone has their passions, even the ones who spill coffee all over their bosses." Then it was her turn. She spoke of her childhood, growing up in a small town, dreaming of escaping to the city. She talked about the sacrifices she'd made, the long hours, the loneliness that sometimes crept in despite her success. The vulnerability in her voice surprised him. She was no longer the untouchable CEO's secretary, but a woman with her own set of scars and dreams. The storm raged on outside, but inside the small hotel room, a different kind of tempest was brewing, a fragile connection forged in the shared space between thunder and whispered confessions. Blackout. The lights flickered, a malevolent disco strobe, before plunging the hotel room into absolute darkness. Liam yelped, more from surprise than fear, clutching the now empty coffee cup like a lifeline. "Well, that's just fantastic," he muttered, his voice echoing slightly in the sudden silence. "Anyone got a spare son?" Vivian chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent a shiver down Liam's spine, even in the absence of light. "I'm afraid not. Seems we're at the mercy of the hotel's electrical grid, or lack thereof." She moved with a surprising grace for someone in heels, her silhouette barely visible against the faint light pollution seeping in from the gap in the curtains. "Are you all right, Liam? You sounded a bit startled." "Startled is one word for it," he said, fumbling for his phone. "Mortified is another. Pretty sure I just baptized myself in lukewarm hazelnut." The phone screen illuminated his face, revealing coffee stains blooming across his already rumpled shirt. He groaned. "Here," Vivian said, her voice closer now. He felt her hand brush his arm, warm and reassuring. "Let's find a towel. The bathroom should have some ambient light." He let her guide him, the darkness amplifying his other senses. He could smell her perfume now, a sophisticated blend of jasmine and something subtly spicy, a stark contrast to the cloying sweetness of his spilled coffee. In the small, dimly lit bathroom, Vivian located a stack of fluffy white towels. "This may not be ideal," she said, handing him one, "but it's better than nothing." "Thanks," he mumbled, scrubbing at the stain. The air in the small space felt suddenly thick, charged with an unspoken awareness. "So, blackout, huh? Think we should call down to reception?" "They're probably swamped," she said, leaning against the doorframe, observing him with an unreadable expression. "Let's just wait it out." Unless you have a pressing need for illumination. He met her gaze in the mirror, his reflection a blurry, coffee-stained mess. Not particularly, he admitted. Unless you count the pressing need to avoid further embarrassment. Another chuckle, softer this time. I think you're doing remarkably well, considering the circumstances. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city and the frantic chirping of his phone, warning him of a low battery. He switched it off, plunging them further into the unexpected intimacy of the moment. Outside, the city sounds faded into a low drone as the air conditioning was no longer humming. Vivian moved closer, and the shared warmth of their bodies in the close space was a comfort. Come, she said, let's wait this out together. Unspoken feelings. The cramped hotel room felt smaller than its dimensions this morning, thick with the weight of what remained unsaid. Liam, a rigid statue on his side of the mattress, inhaled the lingering ghost of Vivian's perfume, a floral whisper clinging to the bedding. Eyes squeezed tight, he replayed the disastrous coffee handover, the humiliation still stinging. He'd practically baptized her with lukewarm Java. Across the space, Vivian moved with quiet grace, humming a tuneless melody as she gathered her belongings. A quick, surreptitious glance revealed her as a study in understated elegance, a charcoal dress molding her form, blonde hair disciplined in a sleek tail. He snapped his gaze away, feigning sleep. Morning, laggard, she chirped, amusement dancing in her tone. Liam mumbled something unintelligible, hoping to sound convincingly drowsy. He felt the prickle of her observation, a silent assessment that raised gooseflesh on his arms. Breakfast awaits. Join me when you're ready, she offered, then vanished into the bathroom. The click of the door was his starting pistol. He surged upright, desperate to flee the suffocating self-consciousness that had sprung up between them. He raked his hands over his face, attempting to scour away the recollection of her bright laughter, the way joy etched delicate lines near her eyes. Downstairs, the breakfast room buzzed with early morning activity. Vivian, already settled at a sun-drenched table, nursed a cup of coffee. He faltered, seized by indecision. Did he truly want her company? Did he want to give voice to the awkwardness now humming between them? He began to retreat, contemplating a stolen pastry and a swift return to his room, but her call halted him. Liam, over here, she beckoned, a tentative smile gracing her lips. He returned a forced smile and navigated towards her, his pulse a frantic drumbeat. As he eased into the chair, their fingers brushed, sending a quick flare of energy through him. He recoiled his hand as if burned, busying himself with the placement of his napkin. So, Vivian began, her voice light, about yesterday. He tensed, anticipating more playful mockery, but it never materialized. Instead, she met his gaze squarely, her blue eyes holding a depth he hadn't registered previously. Thank you for not commenting on the sleeping arrangement, she murmured, her sincerity catching him off guard. It was nothing. But it had been far from nothing. It was the quiet vigil spent attuned to the rhythm of her breathing, the stolen glimpses in the near dark, the undeniable magnetic pull he felt towards her, a woman orbiting in a completely different sphere. A leap of faith. Liam's tie felt like a noose tightening with every word Mr. Sterling barked. He'd never felt so exposed, so utterly incompetent. The coffee stain bloomed across his crisp white shirt, a testament to his morning clumsiness and a beacon for the CEO's disapproval. He risked a glance towards the sidelines, half expecting to see pity, but found something far more intriguing in Vivian's eyes. She wasn't smirking, wasn't rolling her eyes. Instead, a subtle encouragement radiated from her, a silent acknowledgement of his predicament and an unspoken belief in his ability to navigate it. It was a lifeline, a small buoy in a sea of corporate sharks. The meeting finally concluded, a strained silence following Mr. Sterling's exit. Liam mumbled an apology to the remaining executives, a blush creeping up his neck. Vivian, however, simply raised an eyebrow. Rough morning? She asked, her voice laced with amusement, but also something else, a warmth that hadn't been there before. You have no idea, Liam groaned, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. I owe you a new blouse, and probably a new career. Nonsense, Vivian chuckled, the sound surprisingly melodic. Everyone has those days. Besides, I've seen Sterling much worse. He just needed to vent. She paused, then added, how about we grab a coffee? My treat. There's a little place around the corner, quieter than the office. The aroma of roasted beans and cinnamon hung heavy in the air at the daily grind. Liam, nursing a latte, finally felt his shoulders relax. He confessed his anxieties, his insecurities about being an intern, his fear of failing. Vivian listened, truly listened, her blue eyes never wavering from his. You know, she said softly, after he'd finished his rambling monologue, I saw something in you back at the hotel. Something. Genuine. And I saw it again during that meeting. You might be clumsy, Liam, but you're also smart, and you care. That's more than I can say for half the people in that office. Her words were unexpected, a balm to his bruised ego. He looked at her, really looked at her, noticing the fine lines around her eyes, the way the light caught the gold strands in her hair, the undeniable allure that radiated from her. He realized, with a jolt, that his initial attraction hadn't faded, it had only deepened. Vivian, he began, his voice a little shaky. I feel a connection with you. And I know it's probably crazy, considering everything, but... She reached across the table, her hand covering his. It is crazy, she admitted, a playful smile dancing on her lips. But sometimes, the craziest things are worth exploring. Let's take a leap of faith, Liam. Let's see where this goes.